It is the third day, somewhere in the mountains of West Virginia, and a soldier is standing at a checkpoint with his hands on his knees, lungs burning, his uniform black with sweat and cold rain. A cadre member walks over, calm and almost kind, and nods toward a warm truck idling at the edge of the clearing. There is hot food in there, dry clothes, a seat. All the soldier has to do is say 3 words, and every bit of the pain stops in an instant. Nobody will yell at him. Nobody will write him up. Nobody will even look disappointed. The man running this course is not trying to push him to keep going. He is quietly inviting him to stop. Because here is the part almost nobody understands about the most selective unit in the American military. It is not built to weed you out. It is built to make you weed yourself out. You know the name. Delta Force. The unit. The most secretive direct action force the United States Army has ever fielded, run from behind the wire at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Most people picture its selection as a contest, the toughest men climbing over each other until only the strongest are left standing. That picture is wrong. There is no one at Delta Selection whose job is to fail you. They build a machine of exhaustion, silence, and temptation, and then they wait for you to break yourself. If you want the one rule that decides who survives this course, the rule the unit will never print in any brochure, subscribe to War Code, because the whole thing turns on it. At Delta Selection, there is a single quiet way out, and it is open every minute of every day. A candidate who wants to stop simply walks up to a cadre member, gives his assigned color and number, and says the words, "I voluntarily withdraw." That is all. The cadre member asks nothing. No lecture, no second chance, no attempt to talk him back onto the trail. The man is handed his bag and driven away, and by the next checkpoint it is as if he was never there. Eric Haney, one of the first men to wear the unit's flash and the author of Inside Delta Force, described watching candidates drop like flies during his own selection, some through injury, a few almost comically, but most by simply deciding that enough was enough. The exit is never locked. That is the entire point. The unit needs to know that a man will keep moving even when leaving is legal, easy, and one sentence away. Think about how strange that is. Most hard training in the world makes quitting difficult or humiliating. It wraps the exit in noise and shame, so that pride alone keeps men in the fight long after their bodies want out. Delta does the opposite. It strips every ounce of drama out of quitting. There is no ceremony, no audience, no public moment of failure to dread. A man can leave with his dignity intact and a hot meal waiting, and nobody will ever say a word about it again. By making the door so easy to walk through, the cadre remove the one crutch that props up a weak commitment: pride. If the only thing still carrying a man through those mountains is that he is too embarrassed to stop, the unit wants him gone now, not later. They are not looking for men held in place by the fear of what others will think. They are looking for men driven by something that comes entirely from the inside, where no audience can reach it. What surprises people most is how early it starts. A large share of the men who quit are gone in the first 2 days, long before the course has truly tested their bodies. These are soldiers who could ruck for a week without much trouble, and they walk away inside 48 hours. The reason is the same one that haunts the entire course. The moment the structure disappears, the moment there is no schedule, no praise, and no clear standard to chase, something in them goes hollow. They arrived expecting a fair fight against a hard course. Instead, they found a silence with a door in it, and the silence got to them before the mountains ever could. The unit does not mind losing them quickly. A man who cracks in the first 2 days was never going to last, and the cadre do not simply leave the door open. They walk the candidate toward it. At checkpoint after checkpoint, instructors lean in and tell the exhausted man the bleakest version of his situation. "You are too far behind. You will never make the time. This is hopeless. Go home." They are not being cruel for sport. They are pressing on the exact crack they are paid to find, the small voice in a tired man's head that has already begun quietly negotiating with itself. Haney took one lesson from all of it that he carried for the rest of his life. Do not quit. Never quit, no matter what anyone says to you. Keep going until someone physically tells you to sit down. Because the only verdict that counts at Delta Selection is the one the candidate refuses to hand them himself. The decision, when it finally comes, almost never looks like collapse. It rarely happens face down in the mud. It happens in the head, hours earlier, as a quiet negotiation. The tired man tells himself he can always try again next year. He tells himself an old injury is flaring up. He tells himself the cadre are right, and the math no longer works in his favor. By the time he actually walks up and says the words, the real quitting is already over. The body is still standing. The will gave out somewhere back on the trail, in a private conversation no instructor ever heard. The cadre have watched that conversation play out on thousands of faces, and they can read its first flicker from across a clearing. What actually breaks most of them is not the pain in their legs. It is the not knowing. The candidate moves alone, point to point across the wilderness, with no feedback, no sense of how he is scoring, and no idea how much farther he has to go. Men who are still perfectly capable of finishing give up anyway, because they cannot stand the uncertainty. The mind, denied any reassurance at all, starts to fill the silence with its own worst case. And somewhere on a cold ridgeline, a superbly fit soldier decides the whole thing is pointless and turns himself in. The course never has to defeat him. It only has to keep him in the dark long enough that he defeats himself. This is where the unit is most often misread. People assume selection is hunting for physical freaks, the biggest, fastest, strongest soldiers the army can grow. It is not. Tom Satterlee, who would serve 20 years in the unit and fight through the streets of Mogadishu, put it plainly. The course is not looking for monster studs. Plenty of those quit. It is looking for the relentless ones, the men whose engine keeps turning over long after the body has filed its complaint, and the mind has run clean out of reasons to keep going. Raw athleticism is common in the special operations world. What is rare, almost freakishly rare, is the man who treats the option to quit as if it simply does not exist, even while the cadre dangle it in front of his face hour after hour. There are really only two ways a candidate leaves before the finish. He quits himself, or, far less often, the board removes him for the wrong attitude. Arrogance is the fastest path to that second door. A man who struts, who talks down to the cadre, who treats selection like a stage for his own ego, tends to find himself voluntarily withdrawn whether he likes it or not, because the unit has no use for a self-promoter who needs everyone to know how good he is. But the overwhelming majority of the men who fail are never pushed at all. They reach a private moment, alone in the cold and the silence, and they make the decision the course had been patiently waiting for them to make. What sets this apart from ordinary military training is that there is no opponent in it, no drill sergeant to outlast, no rival candidate to beat, no enemy on the far side of the wire. The man is alone with the terrain and with himself, and the only fight is internal. Every other school he has ever passed handed him something outside himself to push against. Delta selection takes all of that away and leaves him with one question that repeats with every painful step. Why are you still doing this? A man who can only answer that with someone else's expectations eventually runs out of answer. The one who carries his reason inside him never has to go looking for it. Everything about the course is arranged to bring a man to that private moment faster. The legs get longer and the rucksacks get heavier with every passing day, so the body is always more broken tomorrow than it was today. Sleep is short and food is never quite enough. The terrain is chosen for misery, steep and broken and unforgiving, the kind of ground that punishes every careless step. None of it is random. Each piece is another ounce of weight on the scale, tilting the candidate toward the choice the cadre will never make for him. Selection is not a wall to be climbed. It is a slow, deliberate erosion, engineered to wash away everyone whose will turns out to have a bottom to it. And the men still moving when that erosion is at its worst, the ones who have stopped bargaining with themselves entirely, are exactly the men the unit came into the mountains to find. If you have made it this far, you are already one of us. Cadets get every video 24 hours early and a badge in the comments. The link is below. Tom Satterlee nearly became one of the ones who left. During his own selection, he came apart on the side of a near vertical mountain, exhausted and starving, and then lost the one thing he could not continue without, his compass. It had torn loose somewhere in the thick brush below him. Alone on that slope, with no way to navigate and no one to call, he came within a breath of walking away from all of it. He did not. He found a way to keep moving. Years later, he described the lesson in 3 words the unit's veterans repeat like a creed. Selection never ends. The mindset that drags a man through those mountains is the same one that keeps him alive on a rooftop in a foreign city years later, and it never switches off. Look at what the erosion leaves behind. In Eric Haney's selection class, 163 men started the course. 18 finished it. Satterlee came out of a class that began with around 120 and ended with the same small number still standing. Roughly 9 in 10 are gone by the end, and the record is clear about why. A handful are carried off with injuries. The rest, the great majority, simply decided they had taken enough and said the words. They were not failed. They resigned. That distinction is the entire philosophy of the place. Delta does not build a wall tall enough to stop every man. It builds a road long enough and dark enough that nearly everyone chooses, freely, to step off it. There is a hard logic running underneath all the cruelty. The work this unit exists to do offers a quit button every single second. An operator can find himself alone in a hostile country, sick, injured, frightened, with no one watching, and an easy way out always within reach. He could stop, he could turn back, no camera would catch it, and no board would ever convene. The mission depends entirely on the fact that the thought never seriously crosses his mind. So selection tests that one trait above all others, under the exact conditions where quitting is not just allowed but actively encouraged. The unit needs absolute proof, gathered long before it trusts a man with its secrets, that when the exit is legal, easy, and one sentence away, he will walk straight past it without slowing down. And that is why the men who pass speak about selection as something that never truly ended. The course was never really about the mountains or the miles. It was about setting a single switch in a man's head and confirming the switch is permanent, the refusal to remove himself. The operators carry that switch into every dark room and every long night for the rest of their careers. And it is the quiet thing that separates them from soldiers who are every bit as fit and every bit as brave. The body was only the test material. The unquittable mind was the product all along. So when people call Delta Selection the most brutal course in the American military, they are picturing the wrong kind of brutality. It does not beat men down. It barely lays a hand on them. It opens a door, keeps it open, points at it again, and waits to see who refuses to walk through. That is a stranger and colder kind of hard than any obstacle course, and it may be the most honest test of a fighting man ever built. Here is what I want from the veterans and the serious students of this in the comments. A course that makes a man eliminate himself, instead of doing the cutting for him, puts the whole verdict in his own hands. Tell me whether that produces a tougher operator than a course that pushes men out. Tell me I have it wrong. Official members get the parts that do not survive the public versions, the names and the details we cut before publish. The door is below.